what's up? Hey, it's Kevin again out here in Portland, Oregon. Kevin Schmidt, physical therapist, bike fitter, and the owner-founder of Pedal PT out here in Portland, Oregon. Right now, this video is being recorded. It's May, which usually means a very, very hot time for bike fitting. So getting a lot of good questions to kind of go through. Before we kind of get to today's topic, I definitely want to kind of take a moment and just say thank you to everyone. We've eclipsed the 1,000 subscribers milestone, I guess. So now it's time for me to get rich off this channel. Let's go. No, I'm kidding. So anyway, over 1,000 subscribers, so that's great. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the content. Remember, it's your questions that keep this channel going. So if you have any burning questions, please comment, click like, subscribe. Let's have a conversation about this, because a lot of times we can kind of use our kind of problem solving or asking the right questions to help you kind of determine the root cause of your pain, with the hope of hopefully being able to remedy that, take care of that, and eliminate that. Ride as much as you like, pain-free. Okay, so as far as today goes, I thought today, because it's our first post after getting to 1,000 subscribers, let's talk about things that have nothing to do with BikeFit. And what I mean by that is that even with a perfectly positioned bike, perfectly positioned, meaning that within normal limits, it should be good positioning for you, you can still develop pain. And a lot of times those have to do more with habits on the bike, how we do things, how we shift, how we pedal, things of that nature. So I want to at least talk about that too, because I think a lot of times I've been seeing a few clients lately that on paper, their bike foot looks great, meaning that knee angles look good, trunk angle looks good, everything kind of looks smooth, yet they're coming in with a lot of aches and pains, from back pain to hand pain to hip pain, and you name it. So a lot of times, like I said, what we want to talk about a little bit is there's generally about, give or take 3 or 4, there's probably more things that we tend to talk about that have nothing to do with bike fit. And like I said, remember, we're riding a bicycle. The human body was never designed to ride a bike. So sometimes the habits that we adapt or how we do things can influence pain. So, okay. So the first thing let's talk about is the first or most common thing that will cause pain that's not related to bike fit is shifting and pedaling. Okay. I know in previous visits before, we've talked a little bit about cadence, which is how fast you are pedaling. The faster you are pedaling, the less stress to your joints, less stress to your tendons, less stress to a lot of those tissues. So kind of when you're picking a gear, you're choosing to pick a harder gear and pedaling at a very low cadence. So let's say you're picking a very difficult gear to pedal in on a flat, and you're pedaling at a very low cadence. The longer that you choose to pedal a hard gear or very slow cadence with that, the greater chance of causing injury, okay? So the idea is it's kind of like taking a 50-pound weight and curling it with your arm versus a 10-pound weight and curling it. Which one of those two weights will cause more stress to the tendons, the ligaments, and the joints? Well, the heavy one, right? So because cycling is so repetitive, the choices that we choose to make regarding pedaling cadence is depending on our shifting or what we choose to pedal with. I've spoken to a couple people just over the past couple weeks that are choosing to, when they climb a hill, they're choosing to put it in a harder gear and just sit and grind and pedal very slowly versus using their gears and shifting into a higher cadence, okay? So these people that tend to choose to pick a really hard cadence, or when they're climbing a hill, they're lowering the gear, making it harder, so they're barely turning over those pedals. You're putting just tons of torque through not only the knees and the hips and the ankles, but also to the lower back. So one of the more common causes of lower back pain is sitting and climbing and not being in an appropriate gear. The goal is, typically with climbing, you're trying to stay above 60, 70, 75, 80 RPMs if you can, okay? Sometimes we can't. But if you choose to sit and grind that out, a lot of times your back will round. Remember, the harder we're pushing, we're kind of trying to push ourselves off the bike. So oftentimes, if I turn sideways, the more we push with our leg really hard, we're going to kind of start rounding. And the more that our back starts to round, the muscles are kind of put in an insufficient position, and therefore can kind of cause some pain in that lower back, because the stress kind of starts getting put into more of the ligaments and things of that nature, okay? So the cadence that we choose and the gear that we choose, again, nothing to do with bike fit, but if you choose to sit and pedal a very low cadence gear, you are probably asking for injury, either probably to the knees or a lot of times lower back pain as well. Okay. okay? So the way to remedy that, of course, would be to increase your cadence, shift down, shift it easier, try to pedal. Once you're down in that lowest gear you can humanly go, that's what you got to work with. But a lot of times too, if it's a long hill and you're kind of grinding it out, the key is to usually shift into maybe one gear harder, stand up on the pedals. Oftentimes standing up on the pedals takes a lot of stress off the tissues, stress off the back, because we're starting to use our body weight to help kind of drive those pedals versus relying on our legs and core to hold ourselves to push through that hard gear. So that'd be kind of one of the first things that we always talk to people about, especially with knee pain, front of knee pain, back pain, things of that nature, even neck pain for that instance, if you're just grinding it. So make sure you're using those gears. I think I've used the analogy before about almost like riding in an automatic transmission car. You know, when you come to a stoplight, the car automatically shifts into first gear. Well, why does it do that? Well, when you first start, you want to kind of get that system going. If you start in like fifth gear, you're putting a lot of torque and a lot of stress on that transmission. And in the bike, you are the transmission. So start in an easier gear. If you're bombing down a hill and come to a stoplight or stop sign, shift into an easy gear so you're starting out easy and then slowly starting to downshift as it gets easier and easier to pedal. So kind of food for thought. So number one would be cadence and shifting. So make sure you're using those gears. If you're not familiar how to shift your gears, start experimenting with how that can make it easy. So when you need to kind of bail out or give yourself a little bit of relief, you know that when you hit that lever, it's gonna make it easier for you, okay? Okay, number two is kind of a little bit with number one, but it has to do with not moving on the bike, okay? Now, not moving on the bike means my hands are in one position. I'm seated and I'm pedaling and I'm not moving. I'm not moving anything. Everything just stays in one position. And so usually we try to say, try to keep your body moving. And by that, you're moving your hands around. You're moving to the tops, to the hoods, to the drops, different hand positions. That would be nice. You're trying to take some time to, if you can pedal no-handed, take some hands off the bike. Sit up no-handed, you know, pull your shoulders back. We gotta kind of keep moving. If we just stay seated and never move, a lot of times we're asking for possibly saddle pains, postural things like neck pain, things of that nature. We gotta kind of keep the body moving. Because the human body was never designed to be on a bike, we have to kind of keep that tissue moving and mobile, moving hands around, standing up off the saddle. A lot of times saddle pains will be caused by people sitting and never standing up on the pedals. So even if you find a comfortable area that's just flat, stand up off the pedals, give yourself some pressure relief. You got to take some pressure off that saddle and off those tissues to let those tolerate then getting back down on that into that position. So the key is keep your body moving as well. If you're sitting there and you never move your head, you know, make sure that you're trying to look over your shoulders, trying to do some mobility exercises and movement while you're on that bike. If you're looking over your shoulder, try to look over both directions. You're just trying to kind of balance that out. But if we just lock in one position and don't move, we're kind of asking for oftentimes kind of neck pain, back pain, sometimes wrist and hand pain, things of that nature too. So the key is try to keep the body moving while we're keeping that pedaling as well too. The people that don't move and just lock in one position, a lot of times they're going to start getting symptoms with that too, okay? Number three is a lot of times has to do more so with the pedal stroke itself. And I think maybe we should probably dispel this myth right now, but the secret is that there is no pulling up on the pedal stroke, okay? Now, don't flood my comments below with pulling up and that's how you do it. But the name of the game is you have essentially two phases during the pedal, during our pedaling, okay? You have a push phase and you have a very small pull phase. There's not really an up, okay? And the reason is that when the starting is, so this is the top of the pedal stroke and this is your foot, we start pushing and now we're into that pushing phase. We're pushing, we're pushing, we're pushing, we're pushing, and we're pushing until we get down to about this angle. Then from here to here will be a little bit of a pull, almost like you're kind of pushing down and kind of a little bit of a pull. And the reason that we don't lift up on the backstroke is because the other leg is now in the push phase. So like I said, when we kind of come back and forth, it's kind of that back and forth. So as one is pushing and then we start to do this pull, it now has set up the crank arm to now be in the push phase for that other leg. And you're never gonna be out pushing a pull. I think, or maybe you're not gonna out pull a push. Maybe that's a better way of saying it as well. So the idea is that it is a push and kind of a little bit of a drag at the bottom, but there is a kind of a passive part on the back side of that pedal stroke because your other leg is now in the push phase. So there is a little bit of a kind of a dead spot in there, and that is normal, of course. But the idea of you pulling and really pulling the knees toward the chest in order to pedal, definitely not advised. It's not really that efficient. And a lot of times, sometimes you can kind of tweak your hips or kind of hip flexors with that. So I know, go ahead, drop some comments, it's fine. But the name of the game is, through science, through what we've been able to assess, there really is no pulling up. There's kind of a drag. And it's just for a very short portion from kind of the end of the pedal stroke to kind of that very bottom, kind of getting almost perpendicular to the ground. And then all of a sudden we're in the push phase. So just kind of think about that. If you're thinking about really actively pulling up, or folks will say, you know, the reason I got clipless pedals is so I can pull up. Well, just remember there's not really a pulling up kind of thing as well. So, okay. Now, last thing, like I said, that has kind of nothing to do with BikeFit, that maybe could be worth its own discussion on, has to do a little bit with nutrition and eating. Some folks are not getting the adequate calories, carbohydrates, nutrition. The less nutrition you have, less energy you're gonna feel like crap on the bike as well. Now, that might result in pain or things like that, but that would definitely make you not have a great time out riding and maybe assuming that something is wrong with BikeFit because you've got no energy, you're feeling it in weird places, you're kind of just stabbing the pedals, you're not really holding yourself together, and that's just because your body just doesn't have energy as well. So I know there's a whole lot of topics out there. There's some great videos out there about nutrition, how many grams of carbohydrates per hour, things of that nature, but that would be another key piece of somebody's pain on the bike, not really related to BikeFit, okay? Now that I'm thinking about this, I did think of maybe one more thing, so I don't know what number we're on, maybe 4 or 5. But the last one that I sometimes will take a look at too is sometimes, especially people that tend to get hand numbness, issues through their hands, things of that nature. If it's not BikeFit related, a lot of times sometimes it's tire pressure. And this is something that we've never really talked about in comfort in cycling, but the name of the game is some people are pumping up their tires way too hard. The old days of kind of the 120 PSI on a 23, 25, 28 millimeter tire is just kind of out the window. We're starting to realize that much lower pressures, the tires have gotten so much better quality, higher kind of thread counts in there, so there's just much more elastic, and a lot of times people are gonna ride bikes with tubeless tires. The whole beauty of tubeless tires is that you can drop that tire pressure, okay? So for example, in my road bike is 38 millimeter tires. I'm typically running about 48 to 50 pounds of air in those tires, okay? Why? A little bit lower tire pressure usually tends to make it just a little bit more of a comfortable ride. It also kind of creates some sort of suspension or kind of cushioning to the road, or kind of any of sort of the bumps and things in the road as well, okay? So a few things that have nothing to do with BikeFit. We've got kind of shifting choices. We've got not moving on the bike, maybe nutrition, maybe like I said, tire pressure, dropping that tire pressure a little bit. Those are all probably kind of key pieces that have nothing to do with BikeFit, but can still cause pain on the bike if you're not kind of paying attention. So hopefully this makes sense. Again, thanks again everybody for the 1,000 subscribers. Let's kind of keep it going. Again, if you found any of this useful, feel free to click like or subscribe. Of course, drop those questions below. It is your questions that keep this channel going. So till next time, again, it's Kevin Schmidt, physical therapist, bike fitter out here in Portland, Oregon with Pedal PT. Have a great day.